What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Today we've got a special treat, a tandem interview with Steve Smith and Hugh Kown. Hugh is a master bingo restorer and technician, also known as the Old Binger. He repairs many machines, has seen all kinds of issues, is a really smart guy, and great fun to talk to. So I hope you enjoy, and here we go.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Hugh.
Good morning, Mr. Kown.
I'll tell you about my bingo addiction, how it all started. As a kid, 15 or 16 years old, we used to always ride our bicycles to school and back, and we rode our bicycles to town. It was about a mile and a half, and went to the movie show on Saturday mornings. One Saturday, I had 15 cents left over, 3 nickels. I stopped at a little filling station around the corner that had 2 bingo machines in it, and they actually paid off if you won. And I watched the older guys play them for a while, and they all left, and I walked up, and shaking like a leaf, I put a nickel in it and played a game, didn't win anything. And I had noticed that they put a bunch of nickels in it, so I had 2 more, so I put 2 more nickels in it. Lost my money. Didn't win anything. Thought about it all week. Then during the week in the afternoons, I'd cut grass, make money in the neighborhood. So I started after the shows going around to the little filling stations, getting to know everybody and watching the adults play the machines. And I watched how they played them. And I watched, and I would lose a little money here, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 cents. And then I began to notice that the machines followed a pattern. If you ever had a big winner, it was really hard to get anything to happen for a while. And the other thing that I noticed was that a lot of times they would coin up maybe 10 or 15 times, be really close, need one ball, or one ball would win 2 ways, and they never went for the extra balls. So I learned the pattern of the machines, and while the other kids were out hustling in the pool hall shooting pool, I was riding my bicycle around town hustling bingos. They wouldn't let me play as long as an adult was playing, but if the adults weren't playing, they'd let me play. And I learned to walk up and look at the game that was already on the machine, hit the R button, bring it back to life, sitting there after they had shot their 5th ball. Maybe drop in 5 or 6, 7, 8 nickels and get an extra ball. And that was my first win on extra balls. I hit a 4 in line.
Oh, it was somebody else's game? Cool.
And I immediately collected my money. It was a county fair. I hit it for 32, I believe.
Would this be why that's your favorite game?
No, it would not be wise that it's my favorite game, but it is.
Well, you had 2 of them down there when I was there, didn't you?
Yes, I still have 1. And I'll always keep a county fair. It's a single button machine, what I call a single button. Doesn't have the pick and play, which is the blue, green, and red. Plus it has wooden rails, a very beautiful machine.
Doesn't that one have an exceptionally nice lockdown bar on it?
Yes, a friend of mine made a lockdown bar for me, and I built it up, and it is very, very nice.
And that friend of yours will never let it go, huh?
Oh, I don't have many in the shop now, but anyhow, that's how I got started. I went home with 32 nickels, and the addiction started. And Nick, you understand the addiction now. But think how much money that was to a 15, 16-year-old kid back 50 years ago, or maybe 60 years ago. So I started just hustling the bingos around town, and I learned to play them. Sometimes I would take $2 worth of nickels or $3 worth of nickels and drop every one of them in it. Get the odds up after I had watched the game not pay off for a long period of time. I knew it was loose, and I'd have one shot at it. If I hit, I'd go home with 10, 15 bucks in my pocket. If I missed, I had lost my $2 to $3. So at that time, of course, I didn't know that they do get loose the more you don't win, and that they get tight when you win. It's a reflex unit. So, skipping forward from my beginning, when I was around 55, the company I worked for had a big workforce reduction, and they offered a ludicrous payout package. And I had been there many years and had lots of benefits, and those were the people they were trying to really get rid of. So I saw the writing on the wall, and as soon as they offered it, I immediately took it and went into semi-retirement. I still did consulting work for paper mills, power plants, as an engineer, turbine overhaul. I hired out probably about 50% of the time. The rest of my time, I had time on my hands. And I wanted a bingo. So I started hunting one. I had no idea how they worked. I had no idea how to work on them. I just wanted to play in bingo. And I couldn't find one. I would have took any magic screen game, but I couldn't find one.
Let me ask you to rewind back to when you were playing as a kid. Did you see any new games show up and get all excited about it, or?
Most of the games back in those days, yes, I saw the Circus Queen show up. The roller derby showed up. Even back in those days, I'm pretty sure that the Silver Sails and the Golden Gate showed up. Yeah, I love the Circus Queen. I love the pick and play features. I learned pretty quick that if you started out with the red button, 1 coin in, and then you hit the blue button, 1 coin in would always give you a double jump on odds, your scores. And that was pretty neat. Then you'd go for just a few more on the scores to see if you could get the okay game. The green high enough to give you a decent okay game. And then what you did is you didn't try to get the scores any higher. You went for features and you went for the okay. You wanted the okay lid again. And you wanted to get in that orange section and catch the numbers down the left side, 11923, the okay numbers. And if you could hit the okay, you didn't even try to get anything else. All you wanted was that okay back, those preset odds, and then you added to it again. And you kept building up until you finally had enough credits to where you could build the features to after fifth. And once you got after fifth in the okay, you were really on your way then. Then you could make some money.
Now, when you saw a new game arrive, were you excited, like, I want to try this one? Because I remember as a young kid, the very first time I saw these, I got shooed away from them, but some teenagers showed up to play them later, and there was a new game there, and they, I heard them saying, "Hey, there's a brand new one. Cool, let's give it a go." And they tried it a little bit and then didn't like it, and they went back to the game that they knew how to play already, and they hit on it, and just wondering.
Yeah, I never ever saw a bounty. I remember seeing Silver Cells, Golden Gates, Roller Derbies, Circus Queens, Cans, a few more of the games. And going back that far, your memory gets kind of hazy. But I played them all. So, jumping back to where we were, I couldn't find one. So I got on the web, and here was this guy up in Arkansas called Doc Mara. Bingos Are Us was what he sold on. And I called him up and talked to him. He kept saying, send me money, I'll send you a game, send me money. And I didn't want to do that. So I got my son to go with me, and we drove up to Arkansas. Spent the night in Harrison. And this guy lived out on Rainbow Ridge, out of Omaha, Arkansas, just south of the Missouri state line. And he had a whole bunch of bingos in a building. And I had never seen a Hawaii. And he had one that wasn't even on the legs. It was sitting flat on the floor. We had to tilt it up to turn it on, but it played perfectly.
It was a Bally or United?
All these games are Bally. I've never dabbled in the United, so everything I talk about is Bally. So I bought it. And then he had like 6 Tahitis there that looked almost brand new. And I wasn't really interested in the Tahiti, and he had a Malibu Beach. And I had never seen the Malibu Beach as a kid that I can remember. But it was magic screen, single button, no pick and play, which in fact turned out to be an exact rebuild of the Laguna Beach. And I guess you know the story of the Laguna Beach, Malibu Beach, Laguna Beach, how the Malibu Beach came to be. In 1979, Bally had so-called reached the end of this rope. All its games had been outlawed, and they were closing down. Las Vegas found out that they were closing shop, and they got together, several of the casino owners out there, because they were still running Bally Bingos in the casinos at that time. This was 1979. They ordered 500 Malibu Beaches on the end of the line before they closed the doors. And then by the time Bally got them all built, they decided they didn't want them, so they reneged on the contract, and Bally sold the Malibu Beaches. But that was the last game that went out. Now, Las Vegas didn't want the fancy machines. They wanted the simple ones. They wanted, in fact, they asked for by name that they build them 500 Laguna Beaches. And Bally said they wouldn't do that, but they would build a game identical to it in payoff, features, scores, and if you'll compare the two, you'll see they're identical. They used updated wiring. They used updated disc. They changed the way that the OK game paid off. Instead of using stop relays when the scores got to their preset point, they used a disc that stepped, I believe it's 28 steps. And through those 28 steps, it gets everything that can possibly happen when you hit collect the OK game. And that's how the Malibu Beach came. Now, the early Malibu Beaches were pretty decent machines from the factory, but I have found 7 or 8 Malibu Beaches that had the last serial numbers on them and were the last few going out the door. And Bally just slapped them together with wiring errors. They didn't test them. In fact, if you look on my website and see that brand new Malibu Beach, the brand new one that I found, it took me 2 days of correcting wiring before it would play. That's how they slapped it together. They were getting laid off in a week or two. The people put it together didn't care. So that was the story of it. And back to my first bingos. So I bought the Malibu Beach. I bought the Playing Hawaii, and I bought the Tahiti. The Tahiti looked very simple compared to the Malibu Beach, plus Doc sold me a game missing some parts. So I fixed the Tahiti. It sold immediately, and it was not long after that a guy found out I had a Hawaii through Doc, and he bought it. So I started working on the Malibu Beach, and it was missing the clutch part, the discs that the Magic Screen motor hooks to. It's got the little slots in it, and a clutch on each side, and hooks to the Magic Screen itself. And I kept trying to get Doc to send me one, and he wouldn't. And finally, in desperation, I got Jeffrey Lawton's number, and that was my first conversation with Jeffrey. I called Jeffrey, told him what was going on, and I couldn't get Doc to send me a part. Jeffrey immediately sent me a part and told me that it would be very difficult for me to put it in, not knowing anything, and would probably have difficulties timing it. But he did send me a part. And it took me, in my spare time, probably about 3 to 6 months to fix that machine totally and get it perfect. Sold it immediately. I didn't have any games to work on, any games to play. I went back to Arkansas, took a trailer this time, rented me a U-Haul. I bought 10 warehouse games from Doc. Londons, just every variety that he had. Brought them home. Now, later in the years, in the Londons, the Safaris, the Bonus 7s, they ran out of room for discs because they had dual games and so many features on them. So they installed an electronic board. I had a fairly good knowledge of electronics of that day. Not of today's day, of course, but of that day. And I found a guy who would help me. Most of them had bad boards in them, especially the capacitors. And Nick, you understand that. A capacitor's like a battery.
Yep.
It's going to last 5, 10, 15 years, and then it's going to go bad.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the capacitor's nothing but a little bitty quick-acting battery. That's all it is.
Right.
Or a spring, it just takes a charge and then spits it right back out. So I cross-referenced all those parts that was in all the boards of all the games that had the electronic boards. I bought up a healthy supply of all the parts. I repaired all the London boards, the Bonus 7 boards, the Super 7 boards, the Venice boards, Zodiac. So I repaired the boards in them, fixed the machines, and sold them.
Now, were they all 20-hole games?
Yes, those were all 20-hole games. I know of no Magic Screen game or 25-hole game that has...
Ring games have it.
Yeah, right. The Magic Ring and the Big Wheel, they have a small board in them. In fact, I converted a Big Wheel to a Magic Ring board and rewired it. The Magic Ring that didn't work quite right, and they corrected it. I mean, the Magic Ring worked right. It was the follow-on game to the Big Wheel.
So each circuit board was game specific?
Was game specific. That's correct. And they recognized a ball in the hole on the secondary game by as little as 0.2 volts. I realize that's a lot today, Nick, but back in that day, 0.2 volts wasn't very much.
No, it's still not very much.
So they were pretty sensitive, but most of the boards were fairly simple. The main goal of the board was to pick up a 50-volt relay.
Yeah.
And to take a signal in as small as 0.2 volts, they ran it through 3 transistors. Each one amplified it more.
Uh-huh.
Passed the signal from it up to much the same as the way a radio works. Takes in a little small signal, amplifier circuit, secondary amplifier circuit, and then you finally got to a transistor big enough to handle the current flow to pick up a 50-volt coil.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically the way they worked. The main trouble in them, the first thing I would do with the board is just pull out all the capacitors, replace all the capacitors, and then I would start troubleshooting the board to see where the problem was. Sometimes it was a signal diode, sometimes just a diode, but the game would never be reliable without replacing all the capacitors. And that's why I stay away from all those games now. I just don't want to go to the trouble to work on those electronic boards anymore.
So these days you're purely EM?
Purely EM. That's all I work on. I do have a few boards laying around. If you run across somebody, I think I got a London board, a Venice board, probably a bonus 7 board. In fact, I've got a bonus 7 in the warehouse that I bought out of a pawn shop in Alabama. This was in really nice shape. Never have bothered to put it together. So anyhow, I went back and I bought 10 games. Loaded the trailer with 10 games. Pulled it over Mount Eagle. Scared to death. Got them home, fixed them, sold them. Did the same thing again. Next time I told Doc, I said, I'm not buying games from you anymore. I know how to fix them. Here's the deal. I'll come up and stay with you if you'll set your travel trailer up and let me stay in your travel trailer. I'll come up and stay 2 weeks. You have me 10 machines sitting on their legs, already cleaned, so I don't get on the outside, so I don't get my hands so filthy working on the outside. You have them sitting on their legs. I'll come up and I'll say 10 weeks and I'll get those games playing. I will not shop them out, but I will make them play. And in return, you give me 10 games. So that was the deal, and I did that twice. And then I got enough games built up, and in the process, I had gotten with my IT guy, who at that point in time was my son-in-law. Unfortunately, he's not anymore because I really liked the guy. And he had built the basics of my website. And then I took it from there and learned to use it and build it up and built my website. And people were beginning to find me through my website.
And what year was this?
had to be 10, 12 years ago. I don't know exactly. But people began to find me on my website. And the biggest thing my website did for me, in addition to selling things, is it opened the door for me for people who had warehouses full of these games. So instead of just brokering through Doc and taking what he didn't want, I got to buy games myself. Most of the games I found, the good picks came out of college towns. I bought 54 games down in Athens, Georgia at one whack. I stood on top of a Lido to take pictures of what was back behind it in a row. They were stacked 15 across, 3 deep, plus the guy had 10 brand new Tahitis. So it was 54. Maybe it was 11 Tahitis. It was around 55 games. The Tahitis were all brand new. They'd been on route less than a month when they changed the law, and he had to pull them off. And they were covered up in the back. And they thought they had a treasure. And I didn't. But I learned that Tahiti is a treasure to certain people. I've got a customer that's a single guy. He's got 5 Tahitis in a row in his basement. All his friends come over on the weekends, and I have put a modification on those games where when you turn the side key, instead of putting one game on at a time, I added a 16-pulse switch to it, bypassed a few things, and you turn the key, and it just spits games on, 16 per RPM, like a machine gun. Of course, the Tahiti runs off a 23 RPM motor, so it's a lot faster than the 19 RPM that you're used to in the Magic Screen games. But they come over, and he puts free games on them. It's got a 40 coin limit, so they throw $5 on the glass apiece. They'll play. Whoever scores the most score picks up the money, and they ante up again. And it's a wonderful game to do that on, but as far as being fun to play, it's not very a fun game, I don't think. In fact, I've still got one of them sitting here in the shop right now. I just got it out of the warehouse the other day. It had been in the warehouse for about 10 years. Pulled it out and brought it in. It's got, let's see what's on the meter here. 58 payout plays on it and 760 nickels in, quarters in, I guess, quarters in.
Wow.
Whoa.
So it's sitting here, and I was just going to clean it up.
Hey, what else is sitting in your shop right now?
The county fair course will never go anywhere. The county fair, I've got, and 2 bounties is what's in the shop right now.
How about that? You took that finally took that Sun Valley back up to Doc.
The Sun Valley is still in my storeroom.
Oh, it was in your shop when I was down there a few years ago.
Yes, it was. It's a very nice Sun Valley. But it's got a problem. And he wanted me to restore it, and I refused to restore it. The reason I refuse to restore it is there is a type of insect, beetle of some sort that's microscopic, that loves the cloth wiring and bingos. And once they get in one, it eats the cloth insulation up, and the machine starts having various shorts here and there. And that machine had the beetles.
That's terrible.
So I fumigated the machine to kill the beetles, and put it in my storeroom. Now, the IDOC up in Virginia, I don't know what his status is now, but I know that he started his own business, and he is tremendously busy in that. And I know he put a whole bunch of capital in it. And he did pick up his Circus Queen that I had totally restored for him. And that's his pride and joy.
I remember he was active on your forum when that was...
Right. He's a good guy. I mean, I think he's just kind of moved on in life right now for a while and very busy. He'll probably get active again when he gets some time.
I'll tell you who's resurrecting their interest, and that's Phil out in Colorado, who was a moderator on your forum.
Phil is a very, very intelligent guy.
I'll say.
I agree, yeah.
He knows a lot about bingos. We did a lot of Photoshop work together. In fact, I played for a couple of years with scanning in back glasses, putting them together with Photoshop, going in, correcting all the flaws and defects. And the problem that I had was getting somebody to print it on the right material. Paper is just too faded out looking, you might say. I found some backlit material, and we reverse printed some of those. I bought a roll of it. It was a lot better, but it still wasn't good enough. And then I found a mother load of back glasses and bought about 100 back glasses and said, shoot, I've got back glasses. Why am I fooling with this? So I just kind of dropped that out of the picture.
Where in the world did you run across that mother load?
They came out of Virginia.
Of course.
Yeah.
My backyard. Well, I'm sitting there, so...
Hot spot, the hot spot closest to me of bingos right now is Knoxville, Tennessee. A lot of bingos there, a lot of bingo players. In fact, in Knoxville, in the little suburbs of Knoxville, let's say, not Knoxville per se, and I'm not going to tell you where, they're still running bingos in the bars. And people line up to play them.
I wonder if those are still raking in coin.
Well, I've got a guy that got two guys in Tennessee I'm working with right now. This one guy's got a silver sails, and somebody's been mucking with the wiring on the transformer on it pretty bad, it looks like. I don't know what's going on there from his pictures, but I offered the guy. He's a young guy, and he wants to learn how to work on them. And I told him, I make this deal with a lot of people. You bring your game to my shop. You show up Saturday. Not real early. You show up Saturday. We'll set your game up Saturday, and we'll start working on it. You get your motel, spend a night, come back Sunday. We'll work to around lunchtime, and you take it and go home. I'll show you how to clean the disc. I'll show you how to disassemble stuff, clean it, put it back, adjust it. And you take it back home, and you do all the guns work. You get every disc in it cleaned. Then you bring it back to me, and I'll do the final troubleshooting, and you take it home, and you'll have you a good playing game, and you'll know enough about it. If something's not working right, we can talk on the phone, and I can talk you through the fix.
You're not going to show him your troubleshooting method?
My troubleshooting method is unique. I developed it myself, and I do not think of these games as being AC. It makes it too hard to think about them. If you think about the games as being strictly DC, the fuse is always in the on the hot leg. You wouldn't fuse the ground, would you? No, you fuse the hot leg. And you notice that Bally did something really bad when they started building these machines. They ran the hot leg straight to the coils and the motors. And all you're trying to do is complete the path to the ground, and the ground is the 3/0. So if you think of it as DC, where you got a hot leg and a cold leg.
Nick is grinning like he's looking at...
Hugh, that is remarkably simple. That is amazing.
It does simplify finding the problem. And it gets down to the point where you can locate a bad wire, a bad Jones plug connection, a bad finger on a disc, 2 fingers shorted together on a disc that's not supposed to be. You can identify most common problems with it.
Now that is opposed to what Jeffrey uses. He's got a coil.
He's got a 50-volt coil with alligator clips on each end, and he clips it on there and see if the coil picks up.
Well, no, it'll trip out. He'll end up using the power off of the anti-cheat relay, which as soon as it makes, drops the relay and drops the power off of it. I think that's pretty smart. It's kind of like almost like having a circuit breaker. And you can do this off the game, too. I've heard, I think that's what Chris Howard does over in England.
I've got one in my tool pouch made up. And I use it in certain cases. In certain cases where you cannot use a jumper, you can use that. And then there's times when you've got a problem going on, and the only way you can find it. I ran into one down in Florida. I was down in Ocala, Florida, and I was working on a bikini that I had restored 10 or 12 years ago, and it had gone through 3 or 4 hands, and another guy had ended up with it down there. And it wouldn't pay off. And I went down there, and I fine-tuned the payoff circuit on it. I couldn't make it pay off. And I noticed that the sequencing disc wouldn't step all the way to the top. And I said, what's that got to do with it, It should still pay in line. And I got to check in, and then I found the inline problem, and I repaired it, but it still wouldn't pay in the sections. So I took my fuse jumper, and I reached up, and I was going to just trigger the sequencing coil with it, just pick the coil up. And when I touched it, it drew a real heavy spark, but it did pick up. Okay, I went to another one and did the same thing, another disc, and did the same thing on the same step-up coil. It picked up, but it didn't draw the heavy spark. So what did that tell me? It told me that the sequencing disc coil was pulling heavy current. Not enough to blow the fuse, but heavy current. So I took the coil apart, and it had one of these brass sleeves in it, inside the coil. Okay? That brass sleeve had some play in it, up and down. And through the years, it moving up and down, and the wire is wound directly onto it, and it's shellacked wire. It had rubbed through the insulation and shorted most of the coil out, or half of the coil or a third of the coil. So I changed the coil and everything was fine. Now those kind of problems, you'd say, well, you'd never find that with a jumper, but I did find it with my jumper, seeing that I was pulling heavy current. And so what would happen is every time it would try to lock in, that sequencing disc would start stepping to check each hole of that color section that it was locked into, and it was pulling so much current that all the other coils dropped out.
Huh.
Gotcha.
And now, let me ask both of you guys this, because you're more meter savvy than I am. There's no way we can check for resistance on a coil like that unless you disconnect the whole thing, because it's...
That's the thing. When it's in...
Oh, absolutely. If you disconnect it.
Yeah.
And normally you can disconnect just one end of it.
Yeah.
So you can disconnect one end, it's not going to come through the other side. Oh, that's right.
No.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense.
It's got to travel through the whole wire.
Would it matter what side you did it on? Because doesn't it connect back on down the way?
Common's common, right?
Okay,
So,
okay, I'm sorry, I got my head around it.
Yep.
Forgive me.
Yeah. So I use a meter on machines very rarely. I don't test switches. Mainly I use my meter on the 120 volt circuits and on the 120 volt stuff. Because what happens in these games, Nick and Steve, is you have so much AC current running back and forth beside itself that it induces a fake voltage in the wires next to it. And you may read it, and it reads that you got enough voltage there to do something, but it's induced, not direct. And
well, I thought that's why they use plastic coating on the 120 volt lines.
They still induce.
Really? Okay.
It's like these phone chargers you're fixing to get, where you phone charges and it's not even connected to anything. It's just in the induced area. That's how a magnet works. A coil induces a pull. So once you try to put that induced voltage to work, the voltage drops to nothing immediately because there's no current flow. So you get false readings with meters, especially in the 50, 17, and 6 volt circuits. You get fake readings, and you'll think you got voltage there, and you don't.
Hugh, you're blowing my mind. I mean, this explains 900% of the problems that I run into.
I don't think you leveled him up. Couple leveled him up.
Okay? So you don't use a meter.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will take a meter and put it on both sides of the switch, okay, and read it, see if it'll conduct. So it's conducting. How much volts are you putting on it? 9 volts out of the meter?
Yeah.
What if it's got 50 volts going to it? Will it conduct 50? Just because it's dirty, so it's dirty, it won't conduct 50, but it'll conduct 9. So you get a false reading on your meter.
You're right.
The only way to do these machines is like I do them. And I'm saying that I developed this procedure, is to actually do a functional test. You test that device, whether it be a coil, switch, motor, or what, by completing the circuit to ground. And remember, it's always got a hot leg on one side that comes directly from that fuse. So if you complete that path to the ground on the transformer, you have jumped everything out of the circuit. That coil or motor should run. And that's all you got to know. And if you want to go switch up at a time up your ladder, these schematics are what I call ladder schematics. The motors and coils are there at the bottom. You start up the ladder. You may have 15 switches up it. And only one of those switches, all the other switches are permissives, that the game is in the right state for that particular thing to happen. But there's only one trigger switch on it. Everything else should be made. And when you push that trigger switch, it should trigger the circuit. So the first thing you do is identify the trigger. Because you don't want to jump the trigger out hard. If you jump the trigger out hard, that coil is just going to pull in and stay there and buzz. And some coils, it only takes a few seconds to burn them up, especially a trip coil on the trip bank. That coil is so strong that if you jump it out for over 4 or 5 seconds,
It's toast, huh?
it's going to toast. So what I do is I reach in there with my jumper clipped to a little bitty screwdriver or something and just tap it and get off of it. It should trip, should pull in. The other one that'll do it on to you is the search index coil.
Nick is familiar with that one.
Search index coil has to pull in real hard and fast. But once it pulls in, it triggers a switch that pulls in the relay cams, and that opens a switch that's feeding direct power to the search index and runs it through a 10 ohm resistor to it to cut the power down to it once it's pulled in so it won't burn up. These people were smart.
I agree.
And I have seen some technicians do some things in these games that, thinking back about it, those technicians were smart too, to come up with the things they come up with.
For your restorations, when I was down visiting you 4 or 5 years ago, you were up to about 75 or 80 restorations, and God knows how many repairs.
I probably will not do any more total restorations except 1 or 2 for myself. I probably won't do any more for other people. I just sold my Circus Queen, which was the joy of my life, but I am going to do repairs.
You didn't sell the Circus Queen with my lockdown bar on it.
No, your lockdown bar is on my county fair. And it's absolutely gorgeous. I did have to do a few little things to it to make it.
Well, it wasn't perfect, but it looks perfect on the outside.
Oh, it does. It does. I had to do a little trimming and make the buttons work just right, but it wasn't much. It's very, very close.
You got the first one, man. It was the very first one before you were my guinea pig on those things.
Yeah, you thickened it up at the back a little bit to keep it from chipping and breaking, splitting so easy where they always do. That was a good one. I'm going to continue to do repair work. In fact, I'm going next weekend, next Saturday morning. I'll be leaving here with my trailer, headed up to South Tennessee, and I'm going to pick up 3 games, bring them back, work them in my shop where I can work at them at my leisure and in the cool, and without people hanging over you. You know, what are you doing there? Why are you doing that? Da. I'm going to shop those 3 out, and then I'll take them back, and I'll get 3 more. And the guy's got about 20, so that should keep me busy for quite some time. Just that one, and I'll pick up jobs on the side, just enough to make a little money, help out a little bit with our home restoration.
What's your favorite game to work on?
I don't care as long as it's a screen game. I'm a screen game person, let me tell you.
I told you, Nick. Nick's first game was a double up.
Oh, double up is a nice game. I've got a really nice double up in the storeroom.
His is tight.
In fact, I traded a county fair and got that as a trade-in. I had previously sold the double up, so I had worked it and cleaned it up. And the guy decided he had to have a county fair, so we worked up a trade, and I took him a county fair. In fact, he wanted it so bad, I used a Laguna Beach body and a county fair head, and he didn't care. He don't care what this guy don't care what they look like. He just wants them to play, and he plays 6-8 hours a day.
Let me ask you about the double up play from a player standpoint. This one that Nick has here behind us seems a bit on the stingy side. Is that something you've noticed, or is his just being contrary?
They are not that contrary. He's got a problem.
Yeah, I suspect it's the mixer needs to be rebuilt.
Why do you suspect the mixers? The mixers is probably the one component in those games that give the least amount of problems.
Yeah, normally. These ones are a little gummy, so I haven't fully disassembled the mixer in this game, and I haven't replaced the clutches. I've only lubed them.
Have you looked to see if the drag links are dropping out at random, catching at random, or is it consistent?
Yes,
okay.
They are. But I just fixed an issue with the mixer latch. It wasn't pulling well enough in order to actually spin the spotting disc. So
sounds like you need some clutches.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the spotting disc index coil.
Yeah.
You confused me when you said mixer latch. A mixer latch unlatches your mixers.
Right.
The spotting disc index coil unlatches the spotting disc to turn.
Yeah, it's on the other side.
If it wasn't turning, it's going to give you the same game over and over and over and over and over.
Okay.
And the other thing that'll cause that to happen is exactly what Steve said. I had a guy from Belgium that came over here and stayed with me twice for 2 weeks to learn how to repair these games. And they had pulled all their drag links out of their games over there. And their reasoning was, makes it going up faster. Punch a button, blam. Punch a button, blam. Punch a button, blam. You don't have that random time that the mixer latches and the spotting disc is pulled in. And I said, let me show you something. So I took one of my games. We tied the drag links back where they couldn't be in operation. And we played a game. I marked where the spotting disc set down. Marked the arm, and I marked where it set down. We punched it again. And there was 5 places on that whole spotting disc that it would set down every time. Only those 5 places out of 50. Okay, so they wasn't getting any random. And he said, looked at me, and he says, in his accent, he said, we must reinstall our drag links. And I said, yeah, you must.
Yeah, it's not the same game without them.
Nope, it takes away the variance. Takes away some of the randomness.
What's the worst thing that you've had to repair that you've come across?
There was a guy up in Tennessee, and he had come across 10 Malibu beaches, and he bought them for $500 a piece. Okay, and he hired me, and I'd drive up there on Friday afternoon and spend a night with him, work on them Saturday, work on them Sunday, and Sunday night I'd come home. And we got down to the last one, and we sold every one of them as fast as he could put them on eBay for around $3,000. So we were turning one a week. He was taking his $500 out, and we were splitting the rest of it, and I was furnishing the parts and expertise. He did the cleanup work. He cleaned the play field. He painted the legs. He did, the stuff that did on the outside. All I did was the electromechanical. One of them had a fire in the spotting disc index and had burned all the wiring off, that big bundle of wire that goes to the spotting disc.
Oh, great.
Burned it off. So I brought it to the shop, put a new spotting disc on it, traced every wire that goes to the spotting disc, which is 50 plus, probably 50, and then you got another row that's got one that says 10, 11, 12, and then some auxiliary wire, and it comes down probably 70 wires that I couldn't identify. Fortunately, it was a Malibu Beach. I could read wire colors, but I still had to put a meter on each one and chase it back to where it belonged. And then I had to find the same color wire out of an old wiring bundle. Did a barrel, which is wrap the wire around each other in a straight line, twist them together, solder them, slide heat shrink on it, heat shrink it. And when you do 70 wires like that and they're burn off in one small area, you end up with this huge wad because you gain diameter every time you put one in. So you have to space them back and forth. But I chased every one of those out, put that machine back together. That was quite a chore. So, you know, and a lot, you talk about a spotting disc fire. There's two places I've seen fires in these games. The most frequent one is the spotting disc. Las Vegas recognized that early. If you ever buy a Las Vegas machine, you'll see that the coil, hot leg, the spotting index coil goes, they disconnect it, they mount a single fuse box, they put a 2-amp fuse in it, and then they run off the other side of the 2-amp fuse back to the spotting disc index coil. So if that coil ever shorts out, then it blows the 2-amp fuse before it can catch fire. The other place I've seen bad fires is above the search index coil. And you know, you never walk away from one of these games when it's paying off.
I know that now.
And that's the reason. Sometimes it'll stop, the control unit will time out for some reason, or the control unit will stop. That stops the pulsing. And all your search indexes, search relays are still picked up. You just got all these coils picked up. But the one that most often burns is the search index coil. And all the wiring above it will burn. And just think of what all's above it.
Well, you know, when Dick did this to my Golden Gate, I had to run in the house for something, and I come back and I open the door and I smelled smoke, and I'm like, turn it off! And we get back there and a puff of smoke comes out, and we can hear the transformer bubbling. It was close. It was close, man.
Okay, guys, it's a little after 12.
Can we have another session, Mr. Kown?
Yes, you can.
Okay. We'll powwow about when to do that.
And Steve, the proper pronunciation of my name is like it's Cowan, Cowan, cow, like a cow, Cowan.
Cowan, I am sorry.
He's been calling you the wrong name the whole time I've known him.
Yeah, you just correct me on air. Edit that part out, man.
Never.
So many people do that, it doesn't bother me at all. But I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Well, this is good. See if we can fire up some more young people to take this stuff along when we go.
Well, that's why I don't mind doing things like that and teaching people and telling people. I have helped hundreds and hundreds of people over the telephone. Some you can help that are smart enough and have a basic understanding of stuff that you can help. Some of them, there's just no hope. You realize some of them, there's just no hope like you were before Lawton got a hold of you and straightened you out.
Shut up, Glee. You go to your room.
To me, you're new blood. You do realize I'm 72 now, right?
That's what I was going to get you to say. Nick is 31?
32 now.
32. Happy birthday.
Well, thanks.
I just turned 58 Monday.
Oh, you're a youngster. Well, be sure if something happens to me, come down here and get your bar off this county fair.
No, I just want a piece of the action. I'll help move the stuff if we have to. You stay healthy.
All right, buddy.
Thanks for joining me, Hugh, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Okay.
And thank you again for joining me. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at nbaldridge, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.